Has been a leading figure in the fight against police brutality and murder for civil rights for many, many years. Many of you recognize Michael from the great documentary, The Central Park Five, where Michael is featured as the leading attorney in the appeal of these framed up youths. It is an honor to welcome my friend Michael.
Hello? Yes. I consider it an honor to have been invited here to talk to you about the problem of police brutality and how to deal with the issue of police brutality. I became first involved in this area back in 1983 in the case of Michael Stewart. And Michael Stewart was a young graffiti artist from the Lower East Side who just happened to be seen in the subway at 14th and 1st Avenue with one of his friends, a young white woman. And as a result of that, white officers who were in the area made the observation, didn't like it, approached him, and ultimately he was taken to the district headquarters at Union Square, and he was hogtied, and he was beaten viciously, and he ultimately was taken to Bellevue Hospital as an unknown male, although he had his identification on him. He languished in Bellevue Hospital for 13 days, and ultimately he died from his injuries. The Michael Stewart case, I think, was, although there have been many cases, as Norman can tell you, in this city involving police brutality, which is not so much what individual officers do, because it is what they do, but it's what the institutions that protect those officers do after those officers do it that is the problem. The officers who outright murdered Michael Stewart, some of them were indicted, not all of them. There were approximately 11 to 12 of them altogether. But some of them were indicted. And in that first grand jury presentation, there was an individual on the grand jury who wanted to do justice. And as a result of his efforts to want to do justice, they found out, or they made a determination, that his actions were improper, and so they disbanded that grand jury. In fact, that grand jury came back with an indictment, but they set aside the indictment and they did a second presentment. And after the second presentment, they identified they indicted 6 police officers. Now, what is particularly interesting about the Michael Stewart case is that the lawyers, we exposed the different levels of corruption that comes together like wolves who have attacked our prey in an attempt to legitimatize what they've done. And in that case, it was the city hospital, Bellevue, who had him listed as an unidentified male pursuant to the request of the police. It was a medical examiner, a man by the name of Elliot Gross, who was so incompetent but so diabolical that he danced to the tune of those who mandated what he should do. And of course, as many of you may know if you remember that case, he extracted the eyes of a dead man, Michael Stewart, during the autopsy and put him in a bleaching solution for purposes of bleaching out the existence of particular images that obviously, from a medical standpoint, indicated that he was strangled. He did not want it to be made known that he was strangled. And he would have gotten away with it, but not for the fact that we had our own forensic pathologists who were there and who made the observations, who caught it in the process. And of course, after this became known, we thought that justice would be done. But we were naive about that because after the 6 officers were indicted, they went to trial. They went before a Manhattan jury, and there was really no difference between the prosecutors and the defense teams who were defending those officers because they had a symbiotic relationship. And as a result of that symbiosis, and as a result of the judge who was a participant in that process, all of these officers who were guilty of murder were ultimately acquitted. And of course, the family of Michael Stewart got $3 million, but that never, ever, ever replaces the spirit and the soul and the physique of one who was taken from us as a result of these acts of police impropriety. But the case that affected me most was the case of a woman by the name of Yvonne Smallwood. Yvonne Smallwood was a wonderful Jamaican woman, cold black, beautiful, tall woman who happened to be jumped by a number of police officers in the Bronx back in about 1987. And they beat her down so bad. I mean, it was like a pack of cheetahs who were attacking a defenseless prey. They beat her down so badly that they ultimately caused her demise. They killed her. And of course, some of them appeared on the TV with their PVA attorneys and with little halos swirling around their heads saying, "We did nothing to her. We did not touch her. Do you see any bruises?" And of course, they made a good argument because you couldn't see the bruising because of her complexion. She was almost a purple dark, but she was a beautiful, beautiful woman. And of course, you couldn't really make the determination as to whether she was beaten and subjected to blunt force trauma until, and this is essential in all these cases where death occurs, until you go into that re-autopsy. And I was there during the re-autopsy, and I observed when she was cut open again, and I observed the lining under the skin that had at least in various parts of her body little red blood clots that indicated from a medical standpoint that she had the daylight beaten out of her. And that the beating, the blunt force trauma over all of her body caused her death. Why do I say this? Why do I bring these cases up? Because there was never any justice handed out in any of these cases. The officers were not indicted. In many other cases, a case in East Flatbush where a young man who had just left the barbershop and entered his car was shot by the police. We don't know why, but they shot him point blank. They took his car, which was a part of a crime scene, and drove the car away, and nobody has seen the car since. There have been many, many, many instances. But one thing that I know about all of these cases is that unless you have a sustained, diverse people's movement, then you don't have the ability to bring about any semblance of justice in these cases. In the Central Park case, where I was lead counsel, it was not the expertise of the lawyers who were involved in that case in bringing about the setting aside of the conviction, which means nothing because they're still fighting like hell, trying to legitimatize what was done. But it was not the expertise of us lawyers. It was a combination of that expertise and people just like you in this room who decided that we're not going to take it anymore. That we're going to engage in protracted struggle. Because that's what this is about. It's not going to happen overnight. Some people become sort of upset, and as a result of being upset and rightfully upset, they lose faith. But in order to score a victory on any semblance, on any level, there has to be a protracted struggle with a diverse group of people like yourselves. And just to touch very briefly on the Civilian Complaint Review Board, I've represented a number of people who have been the subject of police brutality. Some of them were killed, as I've talked about, those who died, but some of them survived physical abuse, even though they suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder in many cases. But one of the things that I know about the Civilian Complaint Review Board is that it is a police animal. Just as Norman talked about, he doesn't even refer a lot of his cases or clients to the Civilian Complaint Review Board, and rightfully so. I never do. And the reason we don't do it is because it is a police instrument for purposes of extracting information that is not resolved favorably on behalf of the person who gives that information. That information is recorded. There is a tape. All of these proceedings are taped by the Civilian Complaint Review Board. But what they do, and I have found this out, and I'm sure that Norman can attest to this, is that individuals who have gone in there with good faith and who have told the truth about what has happened, I have actually heard tapes of officers who are being rehabilitated by their own attorneys and by those who are presiding over the hearings that take place in the Civilian Complaint Review Board. So naturally, most of those complaints that are made result in not being substantiated, simply because the process is designed in such a way that they'll never be substantiated. And if there are very few of them that are substantiated. But even for the ones that are substantiated, as Norman pointed out, the buck stops with the police commission. And even if they have a trial board, then those individuals who have a trial board are ultimately exonerated. So, having been given a note of 1 minute, I will say that it's important. It's important for all of you to stay together as a nucleus and to fight this system as hard as you possibly can, and to fight it again on a protracted basis. This public safety so-called institution on this island models itself after the New York City Police Department. Most police departments in this country look to the New York City Police Department that they refer to as the finest, in terms of the type of engagements and practices and policies that they're going to implement. So that's why a lot of the people who are victims here have been treated not as people who are in a neighborhood that is policed properly, but treated in an occupation zone by a military presence on behalf of those whose interests it's working in, to beat those people down and to police them in such a way that they have no rights whatsoever. So, finally, as my dear sister Fannie Bohamer years ago in the South said, it's in your hands. You are the ones that, out of relative obscurity, you are the ones that must make a determination, and you're the ones that have the option of betraying it or fulfilling it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you. And now, Michael Ramanoff, I'm not sure how you would like to do this. Would you like to speak first? Would you like Anthony to come up? Do you want to come up together? I'm not clear. How would you like to? All right, great. We're really proud to have Michael Ramanoff. He's the attorney of several of our Roosevelt Island victims. who have been beaten or abused. He's doing a wonderful job. And Anthony Jones.